What is poppin' YouTube? Bringing you my top 32 Dynasty running back rankings after the NFL draft, starting it off here in the S tier. And still my RB1 is still Bijan Robinson. Not only did we add Kirk Cousins in free agency, they also draft Michael Penix Jr. with the 8th overall pick. I hear you might not like that pick for the Atlanta Falcons, but we do think that this offense is going to continue to take strides to improve in the post-Arthur Smith era. So give me some Bijan Robinson. I love the ultimate upside. We know who he was as a prospect. Now moving on to my RB2 is Jahmyr Gibbs. And if you have Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, you have a preference between these two guys. I hear you. You might lean some Jahmyr Gibbs because of that absolute explosion that has happened. My big thing with Jahmyr Gibbs, why I have him a spot behind Bijan Robinson, is Jahmyr Gibbs is sharing that backfield with David Montgomery. And I know David Montgomery essentially is on like the last year of that 3-year deal that he just signed because they do have a team option in that 3rd year. But Bijan Robinson is competing with Tyler Algier. Jahmyr Gibbs is competing with David Montgomery. David Montgomery takes a little bit more of those red zone touches. So I give the slight edge to Bijan Robinson, but if you really wanted to press me, if you really wanted to debate it, I hear you. You could probably put Jahmyr Gibbs as the RB1. And this third guy, Breece Hall, is also, like I said, right here in the conversation. It's a big 3, not big me. Shout out to anybody who's been listening to the Drake Kendrick beef, but when we're looking at Breece Hall, we did not get to see him in an electric offense with Aaron Rodgers this last season. We were hoping for a lot more scoring opportunities, but no, he got put again into an offensive purgatory with Zach Wilson. So now he's entering year 3, where we saw last year he really caught a ton of passes. I mean, had 75 receptions, ultimate level bell cow for the Jets. Now, did they draft Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis? Yes, they did. So while I think Braylon Allen is a good prospect, I'm not necessarily worried about him taking over any type of workload from Breece Hall. So like I said, keeping these top 3 guys as the top 3 guys. We then move on to the A tier, and we start the A tier off with Jonathan Taylor. And Jonathan Taylor is coming off a year where he started off the season in a little bit of contract negotiations / potentially being injured. Then by the time he came back, Anthony Richardson, who we were assuming he was going to slide in right next to, ended up getting hurt. And while Jonathan Taylor, like we said, it's been almost 2 seasons since that amazing RB1 overall finish back in 2021, we did still see this last year was able to get 19 receptions in the 10 games that he did play. 15.6 fantasy points per game was the RB12. Now slide that in with Anthony Richardson. They add Adonai Mitchell in the draft. We are really excited about this Colts overall offense. Now, is Anthony Richardson going to take maybe the top level upside of Jonathan Taylor off just because he's not going to be getting all the touchdowns in the red zone? Potentially. But we have seen Jonathan Taylor have that 20 touchdown type explosion. Can he get into that 16 range just with a better offense? I think that's definitely capable for a guy like Jonathan Taylor, especially with the fact that they got rid of Zach Moss, which means they are comfortable and confident in Jonathan Taylor being that ultimate level bell cow. I have Jonathan Taylor here as my RB4. At my RB5, I got Travis Etienne. And Travis Etienne continues to get older just like all these guys, also 25 years old like Jonathan Taylor. And last year, RB7 on a points per game basis. The big thing with Travis Etienne, I feel like definitely top 10 is always in his range of outcomes. The thing is, trying to get into that top 5, top 4, we're definitely going to have to see those reception numbers get up into like the 70s. And the thing is, with this Doug Peterson offense, they like to use the bell cow by committee. But last year, RB6 on a snap share. So I think my biggest concern with Travis Etienne is if that snap share goes down even just slightly, we're looking at him really not being able to finish in that same points per game mark that we would like. And so that's kind of my biggest concern with Travis Etienne. I know they really haven't added much behind him. I mean, you still got Tank Bigsby coming into year 2. They, of course, got rid of Calvin Ridley, added Brian Thomas Jr. So I'm still confident in this offense. I'm just a little bit concerned about Travis Etienne's overall dynasty value. But I do have a spot of Christian McCaffrey because of that age. Really, we haven't been able to see running backs be super successful later on into their careers. But Christian McCaffrey is at this current moment 27. He's going to be turning 28 on June 7th. So right around the corner. We get to this 28, 29 age cliff that really starts to happen. I know we've seen Derrick Henry kind of bust through that and continue to extend his career, but a lot of these guys don't typically continue to be super productive. Now, I think Christian McCaffrey, he is a world-class athlete. He has been a world-class running back, so it wouldn't surprise me if he is more like a It wouldn't surprise me if he's more like a Marshall Faulk, where he can play into those early 30s and be super productive. He is also a PPR machine. When we're talking about him last year with 67 receptions in 2022, had 85. Like, he's really a glorified wide receiver that also is a super good running back. So I hear you. If you are a contending team, you might be able to debate Christian McCaffrey versus Travis Etienne. I just have Christian McCaffrey a spot behind, but would love to hear your thoughts here down below, because the 49ers offense, the 49ers offensive line, Kyle Shanahan, the whole bit is great for Christian McCaffrey. We then move on to our B tier, and starting off our B tier is going to be Kyren Williams. And before the NFL draft, I did have Kyren Williams in the A tier as well. Bumped him down a spot, not because I'm scared of Blake Corum, who got drafted in the 3rd round, just because I understand they needed depth, but getting a Blake Corum type depth piece definitely makes me a little bit concerned for Kyren Williams coming into this year. Now, based on the snap share, based on the usage, based on his performance, I hear you. Kyren Williams, we really shouldn't be scared. I mean, it was the RB2, RB1 on a snap share last year. Like all the metrics that we want to look for, opportunity share, the team run plays, the targets, the red zone touches, all super high, top 10 of running backs. But my biggest concern is the fact that Blake Corum honestly has a better profile coming out of the University of Michigan than Kyren Williams did. He's a better athlete. As much as I don't think Blake Corum is an amazing athlete, he's still a better athlete than Kyren Williams based on the measurables. I'm just a little bit concerned about Kyren Williams and that overall upside. And so that's why I have him here. I think he's still a very solid running back. Can he replicate what he did this last year? I don't know. And so that's why I am a little bit worried, and I have him here leading off the B tier. We then move to the next guy in this tier, and it is going to be Saquon Barkley. And Saquon Barkley, another one of these, probably should be on a contender type teams because he is 26, will be turning 27, but signed to the Philadelphia Eagles, and we've seen New York Giant Saquon Barkley. It was up and down. We not only had the ACL tear, not only had a ton of ankle sprains, but we had just a poorly run offense with Daniel Jones, with very bad quarterback play, lack of wide receivers, lack of weapons. All of a sudden, signs in free agency to the Philadelphia Eagles, where he is the star of the show, where he's getting paid the big bucks, where he's got Jalen Hurts on his right, he's got A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith lined up to the outside, and the best offensive line that Saquon Barkley's played with up until this point in his career. Now, I am a little bit concerned about Saquon Barkley in the fact that is that touchdown upside of the last 2 years. He's had 10 total touchdowns in the 14 and 16 games that he's played. Where is that upside still going to be there? I think it is. I'm not scared of Jalen Hurts in the tush push, but that is going to have to be a thing of when we're talking about Saquon Barkley's overall upside. But in Dynasty, if you need a good contending running back, Saquon Barkley is honestly probably cheaper than Kyren Williams. So I would be having Saquon Barkley here in my B tier. Then we move on to Devon Achane, and having Jalen Wright drafted, you still got Raheem Mostert. You got 3 really quality running backs in this Miami Dolphins backfield. Now, none of them ever seem to be able to stay healthy. So I understand why they drafted Jalen Wright. I just think that puts a cap on my overall view of Devon because I didn't view him as a bell cow. And now we're adding even more mouths to feed in this backfield. I mean, when we're looking at him on a points per game basis, absolutely amazing as a rookie. On a per touch fantasy point basis, absolutely amazing as a rookie. Devon's still here in the B tier. Then we move on to Kenneth Walker, who rounds out this B tier. And it's really, I think I could have moved Kenneth Walker down to the C tier. I just kept him here because I really have a lot of hope for Kenneth Walker in this new offense because I think he is a super talented running back. It just hasn't produced any fantasy football seasons. And the fact that he's still, like I said, being ranked, and I have him ranked as a top 10 dynasty running back, but he's never finished as a top 12, like a running back 1 in fantasy football, makes me a little bit concerned, but I do have him here in our B tier. Then we move on to our C tier. Started off with Rachaad White, and I think Rachaad White is like a must-buy type running back, just based on the fact that a lot of people are discounting him because of Dave Canales. They said, hey, Baker checked the ball down. They got him the ball a ton. That's not going to happen under this new offensive coordinator. My thing is Baker Mayfield's always been a dump-off king, so I don't think that's going to change for Rachaad White's value, which is great, and they didn't really bring in any competition for him in the draft. So for me, Rachaad White, love him here in the C tier, leading it off. Next guy's going to be Jonathan Brooks. And I talked about Jonathan Brooks and my sell video because I do think right now he is valued pretty high. Like if I can tier up him to get into one of the guys in the B tier, I would do that. If I even tier down to get to one of the guys in the D tier, I would do it. But you got to rank him here just because of the youth, based on the fact that he's going into a Carolina Panthers offense that is absolutely desolate, needs running back help desperately, and he got that second round draft capital. Now I'm a little bit concerned about the overall ACL tear. When I'm making these rankings, I'm thinking about it. How am I going to be viewing this in week 4, week 5? Preluding injuries. Jonathan Brooks, to me, I think will definitely be here in the C tier. We then move to the next guy, is going to be Trey Benson, who a lot of people are just all of a sudden going to assume that he's going to overtake James Conner. I don't think that's going to be the case, but I do think Trey Benson is a super talented, athletic running back, like that landing spot with the Arizona Cardinals, next to Kyler Murray, next to Marvin Harrison Jr. Have him here in the C tier, have the 2 youth guys back to back. Then we move on to Josh Jacobs here in the C tier, and I know a lot of you are going to say, hey, Josh Jacobs should have led off the C tier. Josh Jacobs is better than Kenneth Walker that you had in the B tier. These are my rankings. This is how I would be kind of valuing these guys right now. I understand Green Bay Packers organization looks great. They brought back A.J. Dillon. They draft Marshawn Lloyd. I understand Josh Jacobs is going to be the bell cow in this offense, but for how long? I know he got the contract with the Green Bay Packers, so at least for the next 2 years, but there's a lot of good weapons in this Packers offense, so where I know that's going to elude the fact of Josh Jacobs getting more opportunities. We'll have to see what ends up happening here with Josh Jacobs. We move down to the D tier, and we got James Cook, Isaiah Pacheco, DeAndre Swift, Derrick Henry, James Conner. James Cook, Isaiah Pacheco, both of them are the lead bell bell cow backs for their backfield. Now, I think the overall upside, I know a lot of people are going to say this year, like, cool, I understand. Probably my redraft rankings, James Cook, Isaiah Pacheco will be higher. I'm just a little bit more concerned about them on the dynasty landscape, so that's why I have them here in the D tier. Then we got DeAndre Swift, who signs with the Chicago Bears. A lot of mouths to feed in that offense. Also, the fact that he's competing in the backfield with Khalil Herbert, Roschon Johnson. Of course, I think DeAndre Swift, he got the money, so he's going to be the lead bell cow back. But we even saw last year, after those first amazing few games for the Philadelphia Eagles, that points per game dip ended up happening. So that's why I kind of have him here in the D tier. He's young enough that he is definitely still a valuable asset, but where's that overall upside? That's where I'm kind of picturing him. Then we got Derrick Henry, James Conner. Derrick Henry, how many more years do we have? This next year should be amazing in this Baltimore Ravens backfield with him and Lamar Jackson. So I have him here in the D tier, Mr. Iron Man himself. At some point, the tires are going to pop. When is that going to happen? Is that going to be this year, next year, the year after? I do not know. So that's why I'm being kind of cautious with him here in the D tier. Then James Conner. Of course, a lot of people are worried about Trey Benson. I still think James Conner is going to be the bell cow. So if you need a competitive level type running back on your competitive team, I think he's a really great value in the D tier, but I think a lot of people are going to be scared off with Trey Benson. We then move on to the E tier, and we got Javonte Williams leading off this tier. And Javonte is one of those guys where definitely the offense with the Denver Broncos, with Bo Nix, you could see a lot of things going Javonte's way. We just haven't seen that same level of explosion really start to happen since that ACL tear now. This will be year 2 off the ACL, so that really should help him hopefully get back to his full explosion, because like we said, a while back, Javonte Williams was like top 5 RB back in the day, and the fall from grace has been the fall from grace. But Javonte Williams here in the E tier is leading it off for me. Then we got Joe Mixon, who signs with the Houston Texans in that sign and trade deal. Like that, next to CJ Stroud. It's probably like more like a 1 year thing, so another competitive running back. Then I got Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones, new spot with the Minnesota Vikings. Alvin Kamara just continues to get older and just not very good Saints offense. So I have both these guys here. If you need a competitive running back, I think Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, whoever you can probably get cheapest is the one that I'm targeting, but have them all here in the E tier because I think their upside is very similar, but their age is also kind of qualifying them there. Then we move on to Ramondre Stevenson, who Zeke is now out of town with the Dallas Cowboys, which makes Ramondre Stevenson interesting again and intriguing again. Now, we've seen in this Patriots regime, we haven't seen this new Patriots regime, so we don't know what these splits are going to look like, but I do think Ramondre Stevenson does have more value now that Zeke is out, because I think he's going to get more of that touches. And then ending the year tier, we got David Montgomery. He's got the contract with the Detroit Lions. Now, I think Jahmyr Gibbs continues to take more steps, eats more into that snap share, probably ends up being somewhere around like a 37 to 40% snap share type player in this Detroit Lions offense, where he could score 10 to 12 touchdowns off that. I think that is valuable here in the E tier. Then moving on to my F tier, and this is my final tier. We got Nick Chubb, Zach Moss, Raheem Mostert, Zeke, Brian Robinson, Gus Edwards, Tony Pollard, and Blake Corum. Nick Chubb off of this massive knee surgery. How good is Nick Chubb going to be? That's kind of my biggest question with Nick Chubb. Zach Moss signs with the Cincinnati Bengals, but you still got Chase Brown. It wasn't a huge deal, but we did see Zach Moss absolutely carve it up with the Colts when he was the full bell cow. So I am excited as a Bengals fan. I can't really push him any higher in my dynasty rankings. Then we got Raheem Mostert, top 5 running back in fantasy football last season, but we saw what Devon could do. They also draft Jalen Wright. These guys they get hit, and I swear they just like sprain their ankle and they're out for 2 weeks. So like Raheem Mostert, he's getting older. He's really up there in the ages. Like we're talking in the 30s. So Raheem Mostert I do like, but I do think the value is probably to be holding him if you're a contender, trying to get whatever you can for him if you're a rebuilder. Zeke signs with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, are they going to bring in anybody else to compete with Zeke? I mean, granted, Zeke was still a plotter this last year. He's able to maintain touches. He's able to be durable for you, but there's just no yards per carry metric. There's no explosion. It's really just cool. 3.5 yards per carry. And while that's great if you're the Cowboys and maybe you just need a few running attempts and you want to be really pass happy offense, that's not really going to bode well for your fantasy football rosters. And especially for Dynasty, he just continues to age and get up there in age, and he's not aging well as a Buckeye fan, in my personal opinion. So I have Zeke here in the F tier. Then we got Brian Robinson, had himself quite the year last year. I know he's gone through quite a lot up into this point in his NFL career, but when we're competing, they brought in Austin Eckler. You still got Chris Rodriguez. We're going to see what this new coaching regime is going to do with Jaden Daniels, who also will be taking some of those end zone touches that Sam Howell was just handing the ball off to Brian Robinson. Makes me a little bit more concerned for Brian Robinson, so I have him here in the F tier. Gus Edwards. Maybe you can make the argument Gus Edwards should be higher up in this tier just because the Chargers signed Gus Edwards. Now they did sign J.K. Dobbins. They did draft some running backs. So like, I hear you when you're like, Caleb, Gus Edwards has been productive in his time in the NFL when he's been healthy. And this team's going to be run heavy under Jim Harbaugh. I just could not do it to myself because like I said, I know we're going to have a little bit young offensive line. They have a quality offensive line, even though it is young. Where's that touchdown upside? What's this offense going to overall look like without a ton of great wide receivers? How are they going to move the ball? Question marks. Then we got Tony Pollard, who signs the extension with the Tennessee Titans. I like Tony Pollard. Pollard as a running back. I thought the overall upside was going to be there when he got the full bell cow role for the Cowboys. That didn't end up happening. Now he goes to the Tennessee Titans, who also have Tajay Spears, very similar type of running back, but he doesn't have the contract. So I know Tony Pollard's going to get first dibs, but I think there's a case to be made that Tajay Spears is more explosive than Tony Pollard. And I don't know. I thought that Tony Pollard signing was very interesting for the Titans. I'm not baking on the contract really impacting my decision here with Tony Pollard here in the F tier. And then rounding out Blake Corum, of course, getting drafted to the Rams behind Kyren Williams. Definitely Blake Corum could be a riser here in the F tier for me. So if you like these Dynasty rankings, if you like hearing it, we're going to be doing wide receivers later this week. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Hit that like and subscribe button. We're putting out more content later this week, more Dynasty content. So if you like Dynasty football, subscribe. We will be doing redraft fantasy football for y'all that love some redraft here later in the summer. But I appreciate all that you guys are doing, supporting me here, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.